Any objections? We don't really have group, business meetings in this group. Any problems? They're going to get 2 copies.
I want one.
Yeah.
I would just like to suggest that we buy big books instead of Language of the Heart, because when somebody comes in here brand new.
We have big books.
You have big books?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Well, the Language of the Heart is probably the second most important literature we have. It's a wonderful book, and it's not generally available.
Yeah.
So having a couple copies here might be a real good idea.
And it's AA approved. So I'm going to buy a couple copies of this to give it. And that's all. Thank you.
Is that it?
You're welcome, Linda.
Jim, you're starting a sponsorship workshop. Did you let us know about that?
That's going to be starting on Friday at the 441 Club.
What time you want to start?
I think it starts at, I think it's a 7 o'clock meeting.
7 o'clock at the 440?
You could call over there and find out. Chiropractor Dave knows about it. He set it up. So if you happen to see him.
Who's that?
Well, that doesn't identify him. I can't do it. He's kind of a tall, dark-haired guy. Dr. Dave, the chiropractor. Okay? We're going to be starting, that's a, I don't know, about 36, 38 week cycle. The sponsorship workshop, we study the big book and how it all, where to find everything and how it all ties together, and we study sponsorship as a, and all the principles of sponsorship. And we study the steps and how to teach the steps, and the traditions and how to teach the traditions. And it takes anywhere from 35, 38 weeks.
Where is this?
Every Friday at the 441 Club.
You're starting this week?
Starting this
Hmm?
Friday, yeah.
This Friday, yeah.
What time?
Love this.
Nobody was listening, Jim.
Nobody was listening.
I-
They cut their attention.
Pretty sure it's at 7. They will, if you call over there, they'll know. They had 2 group consciences on it, so there are a lot of people there that don't particularly like me. They think I'm too much of a big book pounder or something. But I guess they got overcome in the second meeting. I thought, heck, I was going to get off the hook on that one. But anyway, I'm glad to do it. I've been doing sponsorship workshops now for 15 years. There are 2 others going right now. One at Saturdays at the 101 Club and one on Wednesday nights down in Hallandale. We're getting a full house in Hallandale. It's amazing how many people are showing up for that thing. Okay. Page 89. We're going to get started. And remember what we talked about, the we're going to go from page 89 through page 96 is where we're going to find the instructions for working with newcomers. So you might want to mark that. It'd be a real good idea to study those pages yourself. It'll give you all you really need to know about how to work with somebody new. And we're going to read those pages ourselves and talk about them as we go. The top of page 89. Practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. It works when other activities fail. This is our 12th suggestion. Carry this message to other alcoholics. You can help when no one else can. You can secure their confidence when others fail. Remember, they are very ill. You want to pay attention to those lines. Each one of us then has a responsibility to do this, because we can help when no one else can. And why? Because we can secure their confidence. when others fail. Last night at the Big Book meeting at the 101 Club, there were two guys there who are major league counselors in the rehab industry. And I knew who they were, so I had a lot of fun with them. I was surprised they stuck it out. And that's not because I'm disdainful of them or their efforts, because I'm certain that knowing these two guys, that they're dedicated professionals. The problem is they don't know what to do for us. All the human solutions fail, and they have no way to secure the confidence of an alcoholic, because the alcoholic can't relate to them. Can relate to them as a professional with degrees and a lot of fancy talk, but down deep inside, where is the relationship? It just isn't there. That's why AA has succeeded where all other human institutions have failed. Remember, they are very ill. Why are we going to do this? Well, life will take on new meaning. To watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow up about you, to have a host of friends. This is an experience you must not miss. We know you will not want to miss it. Frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is the bright spot of our lives. And boy, is that ever true. What we receive by way of major gifts as a result of our carrying the message to others, we couldn't buy for $10 billion. And the Big Book talks about it being God's will for us that we be happy, joyous, and free. And happiness, joyousness, and freedom is a direct product of carrying this message. But there's another very good reason to do it. And that is, if we don't do that, we're quite likely to drink again. Perhaps it's even inevitable. Somewhere down the line we will. Then there's also this frequent contact with newcomers and each other is the bright spot of our lives. We get a host of friends. There's all kinds of wonderful stuff going on here. You want to build up a whole new life for yourself. If you're new, this is one of the main ways that we go about building up that life. Not everybody you work with is going to become a friend. Not everybody you work with is even going to be around that long. Maybe you get them to the steps and that's the last you hear of them. That's okay. But every once in a while something clicks. And there you got a new friend. And it's amazing how that works. In my company, the three other partners in my company are sponsees. And our sales manager is my sponsee. Now, it wasn't planned this way. It's just that because we had established a lot of rapport, we gravitated toward each other. And these are people I can trust, absolutely, because I know them and they know me. There's all kinds of good stuff going on here, and a lot of it, you can't plan for it, but it will happen. But not unless we extend ourselves. Going on, perhaps you're not acquainted with any drinkers who want to recover. You can easily find some by asking a few doctors, ministers, priests, or hospitals. They will be only too glad to assist you. Well, you don't want to count on that. Maybe in 1939 that was true. There are places, however, there are priests, there are ministers, there are doctors, and there are hospitals which will welcome us. But now in these days it's pretty much more of a formal type of thing. Not just to say, okay, come on in and, have at them. Here they are. That was what Bill was writing about, because that's the way Dr. Silkworth treated him. And of course his experience with ministers was especially was when that first guy put him in contact with Dr. Bob. So he never forgot that. They'll be only too glad to assist you. Don't start out as an evangelist or a reformer. Unfortunately, a lot of prejudice exists. Now, Bill is writing about himself here because that's exactly the way he started out. He was preaching. He was evangelistic. He was trying to reform. And it didn't work. And so as he wrote this, he was drawing on his own experience. You will be handicapped if you arouse the prejudice. Ministers and doctors are competent, and you can learn much from them if you wish. But, and here's the big but, it happens that because of your own drinking experience, you can be uniquely useful to other alcoholics. So cooperate and never criticize. To be helpful is our only aim. Now, there's some treatment centers around that used to let us come in and work with their patients and even worked steps with them while they were still in the treatment center. But that's pretty much dying out now. They don't much like us doing that anymore. I think it's got to be, I guess it must be threatening to their staff. Because we're talking about things that will lead to absolute recovery. And those are not the things that they're teaching or that they have learned or that they have their degrees in. Okay, now top of page 90, we're going to commence to learn how to work with somebody new. And here's the first thing we're going to do. When you discover a prospect for Alcoholics Anonymous, find out all you can about them. Now, at the first meeting, one of the things that we do is we show an interest in the newcomer. We're not beating them around the head and shoulders about being a drunk. We're talking to them. We're seeing what we can find out about them. It doesn't have to be a full biographical treatise. All it has to be is some high spots. How old are you? You married? You got a job? Go to church? How long you been drinking? A few things like that. But if he does not want to stop drinking, don't waste time trying to persuade him. I see people doing that all the time, and it's almost as if they're driven to it. It's almost as if I don't keep on trying to persuade this person to stop, that I'm not doing my job. The big book's telling us just the opposite. If he doesn't want to stop, don't waste time trying to persuade him. You may spoil a later opportunity. Now, these guys who wrote this book knew how important it was to experience a bottom. They even wrote about it. Remember, let's take a look at page 53. It's a very simple statement here, but it's very profound. In the center paragraph,
Page, I'm sorry.
page 53. Got it?
Yeah, I already got it highlighted.
Oh, all right. Let's read what it says. When we became alcoholics, crushed by a self-imposed crisis, we could not postpone or evade. That's a perfect description of a bottom. Then we had to fearlessly face the proposition either God's everything or else He's nothing. God either is or He's not. That's a description of the second step. But it's also a description of the bottom. And this is telling us that this person hasn't reached the bottom yet. Don't waste your time on him. Don't spend a lot of time trying to convince him that he or she is an alcoholic. You may spoil a later opportunity. This advice is given for his family also. They should be patient, realizing they're dealing with a sick person. Now, the same advice is going to be offered in the next chapter, in chapter to wives. We find it also in chapters 9 and 10, the same admonition, that we are not to bully or press the alcoholic. We've got to let them find their own way into recovery. And there's a phrase in chapter 7, which we'll get to later, that if he is to find God, the desire must come from within. And over again, we've got the same message, and we need to pay attention to that. Somebody was suggesting that ego gets involved. That's true, and we have to be careful about that. By golly, I'm going to make sure she gets sober. She's not going to duck out on me again. And it's almost as if I'm going to have to do that because I have to satisfy my own ego. No. We stay away from that. However, if there is an indication he wants to stop, have a good talk with the person most interested in him, usually his wife. Now this stuff is 1930 stuff, and it doesn't work very well today because we've done everything we can to exclude the families rather than to include them. And in those days, they recognized the disease was a family disease, and it was, they tried to include the families. The families were included in the meetings. Today, we have these so-called closed meetings, and we exclude people. The family can't come in. They want the wife here. She might go back to her bridge circle and rat us out. And don't let that little 8-year-old kid be in here, because you go back to grammar school and rat us out there, and pretty before you know it, it'll be all over town that we're drunks. So we close our meetings. We don't let them in. This is talking about something which is utterly rational, and so much of what we do these days is irrational. Unless we pick this book up and follow the directions in here. Now this book is entirely rational. Now why should that be? Well, it's simple. It isn't rationalization at all. It's rational because it's real. This is a recitation of what in fact happened, what they did. Not what they thought they ought to have done or what they think we ought to do, but what they did. Remember the forward of the first edition? To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this volume. That's why they wrote it. Talk with the person most interested in him, usually his wife. Get an idea of his behavior, his problems, his background, the seriousness of his condition, and his religious leanings. You need this information to put yourself in his place, to see how you would like him to approach you if the tables were turned. Now, if it's possible to do that, it's highly recommended. Usually these days, however, we're going to have to try to get that information from the new person themselves. That's why it tells us right at the top of the page, find out all you can about him or her. So that's our first task with somebody new. Have a friendly chat. Get them to talk about themselves without beating them up about whether they're a boozer or not. Sometimes it's wise to wait till he goes on a binge. The family may object to this, but unless he's in a dangerous physical condition, it's better to risk it. Don't deal with him when he's very drunk unless he's ugly and the family needs your help. There's the family again. Wait for the end of the spree, or at least for a lucid interval. Then let his family or friend ask him if he wants to quit for good, and if he would go to any extreme to do so. If he says yes, then his attention should be drawn to you as a person who has recovered. And that's not likely going to happen, because so much today, people coming in here, being ordered in here by the courts or by employers or by probation department or the family, and they're just showing up, and some of them are being dragged in by other members. So we have to be real flexible, and But there's a way of doing this, and as we go through the next few pages, we're going to see how in the end it will come out okay. You should be described to him as one of a fellowship who, as part of their own recovery, try to help others, and who will be glad to talk to him if he cares to see you. Now, there are people out there, especially in California and out west, who are calling themselves interveners, and they're making big money doing this. It's a buzzard type of business. They pick, going out and scrapping over the leavings. They go to the families, and they get the families to agree that this drunk needs to be stopped. And so the intervener collects a bunch of money from the family up front, then goes to the treatment center and got to deal with the treatment center much as a bounty hunter, and then gets the family to set this poor devil up so that the intervener and the family can pounce on him, and then they try to cart him off to the treatment center. And so the bounty hunter, the intervener, has made money going both ways, and most of these people claim to be members of the fellowship. I don't think they stay sober very long doing that, but in the meantime they probably make a few bucks. If they're like you and me, they won't keep it very long once they start to drink. Maybe we'll never see them again. To my mind anyway, it's a brutal thing, and I hate to see it. I've not seen it get started down here. Okay, if he does not want to see you, never force yourself upon him. Neither should the family hysterically plead with him to do anything, nor should they tell him much about you. They should wait for the end of his next drinking bout. See the importance of the bottom again. You might place this book where he can see it in the interval. There's no specific rule can be given. The family must decide these things, but urge them not to be over anxious, for that might spoil matters. Now, in the chapter to wives, the wives are going to be told how they can still lead a happy life even though they're living with a flat-out drunk, and who may never recover. And of course, that advice was given in the days when there wasn't a hair trigger on divorce. Most people figured that if they were married, they were, that was a solemn commitment through sickness and in health. But now the question is, can I still have a decent life even though I've got a drunk living with me? And it's amazing what chapter 8 tells them, that yes, you can, and here's the way you go about it. But all the way through these next chapters is the involvement of the family. Usually the family should not try to tell your story. When possible, avoid meeting a man through his family. Approach through a doctor or an institution is a better bet, because you see, he's going to be mad at his family for setting him up, and that starts everything off on a bad note. So you're far better off if it's come from somebody who is not dealing with this person every day. If your man needs hospitalization, he should have it, but not forcibly unless he's violent. Let the doctor, if he will, tell him has something in the way of a solution. And when your man is better, the doctor might suggest a visit from you. Though you have talked with the family, leave them out of the first discussion. Under these conditions, your prospect will see he's under no pressure. He will feel he can deal with you without being nagged by his family. Call on him while he's still jittery. He may be more receptive when depressed. Now, that's kind of all the prologue, the preamble. And now we're going to get into, we're now face to face with this person. Now what do we do? If we haven't learned anything about the person up to now, that'll be the first thing we want to do, is try to find out as much about him as we can. let's see what the rule is. See your man alone, if possible. No mob scenes. This goes right back to the basics of AA recovery. It's a one-on-one program. See your man alone if possible. First, engage in general conversation. After a while, turn the talk to some phase of drinking. Tell him enough about your drinking habits, symptoms, and experiences to encourage him to speak of himself. See, now we're beginning the process of credibility, of letting this person know that we know what we're talking about. We've been there before him. If he wishes to talk, let him do so. You will thus get a better idea of how you ought to proceed. If he's not communicative, give him a sketch of your drinking career up to the time you quit. But say nothing for the moment of how that was accomplished. Now that's important. You see, what it's doing is splitting off over here our story. We're telling him what happened. We're telling him how it was. And we're not telling him yet about how we recovered. And you'll see why. We're not even talking recovery at this point. We're talking as one alcoholic to another. If he's in a serious mood, dwell on the troubles liquor caused you, being careful not to moralize or lecture. If his mood is light, tell him humorous stories of your escapades. Get him to tell some of his. So now what's happened here? We found out as much as we can about him. And now we are telling him how we drank. We tell him what happened to us when we drank. We tell him about our attempts to stop. In effect, what we're doing is beginning the process of explaining our powerlessness over alcohol, our inability to control our drinking, and our inability to stop when we desperately needed to. And so therefore, we're giving him an opportunity at this stage to begin to seriously identify with us. Now, of course, there are other stories that he's going to read in the book with which he can also identify. And this is where we start the process of helping him break down denial. Because as he's listening to us, if he's identifying himself with us, and we're stating that we're alcoholics, he begins to see the parallels, and it begins to break down the denial. Bottom of page 91, when he sees you know all about drinking, all about the drinking game, commence to describe yourself as an alcoholic. Tell him how baffled you were, how you finally learned that you were sick. Give him the account of the struggles you made to stop. Show him the mental twist which leads to the first drink of a spree. We suggest you do this as we've done it in the chapter on alcoholism. If he's an alcoholic, he'll understand you at once. He will match your mental inconsistencies with some of his own. Remember in Fred's story, he talked about those strange mental blank spots. And Bill and Jim talked about how he began to drink as carelessly as if he were drinking soda pop, with no thought at all of the consequences. So there's much more in the book along the same vein, but this is our first meeting with the person, and we're trying to reach out and encompass him or her. We want them to not only identify themselves with us in terms of how we drank, but how alcohol affected us, and then how we tried to stop, because chances are your prospect has already tried many times to stop. That's not universally true, but it's going to be true most of the time. So they'll know what you're talking about. They tried and they couldn't stop. Maybe they've been in 6 treatment centers, 3 detoxes, and a couple times in jail. Maybe they've been in a psych ward somewhere. None of it did any good. Maybe they've been down to their church and on their knees for the last 3 years, getting baptized and getting all that other stuff, and nothing worked. So they're going to know what you're talking about. Most of the time, when you describe your struggles to get sober, they're going to understand. And we want to describe the terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair that we found ourselves in. Remember the terrible 4 horsemen? That same bunch that are doing drag races out here in the parking lot right now. They stay in shape.
Can you explain that?
What?
What you just said about the drag racing, if we're out here drag racing, she wants to know what you meant by it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you got a big book there. I'll show you. Let's all turn to the first page of chapter 11, page 151. Look at the second paragraph on page 151. The less people tolerated us, the more we withdrew from society, from life itself. As we became subjects of King Alcohol, shivering denizens of his mad realm, the chilling vapor that is loneliness settled down. It thickened, ever becoming blacker. Some of us sought out sordid places, hoping to find understanding, companionship, and approval. Momentarily we did. Then would come oblivion and the awful awakening to face the hideous 4 horsemen. Terror, bewilderment, frustration, despair. Unhappy drinkers who read this page will understand.
But what's that got to do with outside?
Oh, it just means that they're out there staying in shape, waiting for us to slip.
As hard as we're working in here to stay sober, they're like working out there, so when we get out, for them to grab us again.
Oh, like they say, the disease.
Yeah, well,
that's
if you-
outside.
Same thing.
It's a metaphor.
It is it's a metaphor.
I kept thinking of that new movie, Too Fast.
We have our own Belmont out here every Sunday. Okay, if you're satisfied as a real alcoholic, dwell on the hopeless feature of the malady. Show from your own experience how the queer mental condition surrounding that first drink prevents normal functioning of the willpower. That's where the part of the disease that resides in our mind comes in. This is the insanity of that first drink. We're going to pick up that drink no matter what we know the consequences will be. We don't stay sober on the fear of drinking. Don't at this stage refer this book unless he's seen it and wishes to discuss it. And be careful not to brand him as an alcoholic. Let him draw his own conclusion. If he sticks to the idea that he can still control his drinking, tell him that possibly he can if he's not too alcoholic. But insist that if he's severely afflicted, there may be little chance he can recover by himself. So you see how detailed these instructions are. And all we have to do is really understand what this is telling us, and then there's no mystery as to how to work with a newcomer. All right, I'm going to thank you very much, all of you, for being here today, and let me share this with you. We'll start there on page 102, or 92, next Sunday. God willing, the creek don't rise. I plan to be here, and I hope you will be too. And somebody needs to do the chips, please. Anybody volunteering to do the chips today?
I'll do the chips.
Good.
My name's Quincy, I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Quincy.
I don't exactly know the sequence, except I know what the white chip is all about.
Well, it's white, and then red, and then blue. Those are the only ones we
Anybody
have.
like to start a new way of life with a white chip? And we have a red chip for
3 months.
for 90 days, 3 months. And a blue chip for blue skies, 6 months.
That's it.
Okie
If
dokie.
everyone is happy with the way you've started your day and finishing your day, give yourself a hand.
Okay, do we have anyone who is having an A birthday in the month of June? You got yourself down in the book, Sharon? How many years?
18 years.
18 years, all right.
4 years.
4 years, all right. Be sure that Sharon has you in the book so we can celebrate with you at the end of the month. All right, guys, let's close the meeting.
4 years and
You're going to celebrate here, Louis?
20,000 pages.
Good job, kid. Been boxing again, haven't you? Let this circle represent the unity of our fellowship. That moment of silence for those who are still suffering. And we'll say the Lord's Prayer together. Thank you. Lord's Prayer. Our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Keep coming back, it works if you work it.
Hold on just a minute. Linda has an announcement.
Jim is doing a prayer meditation meeting tonight in Delray on the beach. So if anybody wants to go, I have the information.
Say it again. Say it again.
Jim is running a prayer meditation meeting tonight at 7 o'clock on the beach in Delray Beach. If you want information, see me after the meeting.
thank you. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.
Let me ask you a question.
All right.